The people groaned under the burdens of taxes levied by the state, rents and contributions paid to the Lord, tithes collected by the clergy, as well as under the forced labor exacted by all three. Every lower class citizen suffered greatly, and every year more and more towns became overcrowded with the poor. Many peasants migrated to other towns in hope for better conditions, but the heavy taxation and starvation affected nearly all of France. The French Revolution was caused by overcrowding, lack of food, and extremely high taxation on the peasants throughout the years. This crippled France's economy and weakened the nation drastically. Imagine you and your family living in a small, rat-infested shack with little to no food and having to watch your food be taken away from you by taxation right in front of your eyes while you and your family starved to death. This is exactly how the peasants felt almost every day throughout the late 1700s, and poverty was not uncommon. The great mass of peasants grew poorer and poorer, and every year more peasants became poor and miserable. Life as a peasant was truly awful in many ways, and it would come to influence Europe in massive ways in the future. French society was divided. The king at the very top made the laws, and whatever he said went. He was prone to pursue and purchase luxurious items, like a brand new palace in Versailles in the middle of the French Revolution. These luxurious purchases showed everyone that the king's best interests were clearly not set on the people's best interest. Under King Louis XVI were the nobility. They were powerful individuals who had the ability of taxing the peasants underneath them. The clergy were the church and the priests, and they were underneath the nobility. They reigned over the churches, and they had special power not to be taxed. The clergy were kind of a neutral in society. They wanted to keep the government the way that it was and not change it because they liked their power and privileges. Some of these privileges were not having to pay taxes to the king. They had high power over the army, and the nobles controlled when the peasants would pay taxes. Political power, as well as an immense share of the wealth, belonged to the aristocracy and the clergy, while the mass of the people were nothing but beasts of the burden to the ruling classes. Society was extremely corrupt. No one was equal. Many believed that citizens mostly got in the way of the rulers, like the king, nobility, and clergy. France was carried on the backs of the workers, or the lower class, and the nobility refused cooperation and continued to put them further and further into debt. In the midst of the French Revolution, King Louis called the three estates together for a meeting to discuss new tax laws and solutions to the debt problems in which the king had gotten them in. The three estates met in Versailles on May 5th, 1789. When people arrived, the third estate said that they were their own national assembly, and they were forming their own government. They vowed they would not stop until they had written a new constitution for the country of France. As King Louis tried to stop the third class from gathering, more and more conflict arose, and the people grew tired of waiting, so they gathered and revolted. On June 14th, people in Paris took control over the Bastille, a French prison. This was to show that reform was coming, and the Third Estate has every intent on changing France. The peasants took down Bastille and seized all the weapons there. This made them even more dangerous, and the king saw this. They acted by fleeing to the wife's home country, Austria. They were caught just outside a small town of Varennes on August 10th, 1792, and sentenced to death by guillotine under the order of Maximilien Robespierre on January 21st. The National Assembly was formed, and it was important because it was a party that represented the people and not the nobility or the king. It was formed under a new constitution and claimed that the throne had no authority over it. The National Assembly was the people's doing, because they craved a new sense of government that would show equality, liberty, and fraternity, which was the motto of the people during the French Revolution. Throughout the French Revolution, new enlightened ideas became evident and changed France. However, these new ideas would have been non-existent without the will of the people. France was changed by the lower class, by the people in which took pride in their country and wanted to take pride in their country. And therefore, after nearly a decade of economic, political, and social reformation, a new constitution in France was issued in 1791.